Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to do my week 3 wrap-up of Nonfiction November. So before I get started with what I've finished this week for books, I just wanted to thank everybody that commented on my previous video on magazines and how they fit into our reading lives. There was a lot of food for thought in the comments. It's really helped me sort of clarify to myself what I'm trying to accomplish with my reading log, how I track my reading, and also what I want to get out of my magazine reading. So that's been extremely helpful. And one comment that I heard multiple times was that people would like me to share articles that I read that I find interesting or important. So I'm going to try to incorporate at least one article recommendation in every one of my wrap-ups. And so I thought I'd start with that today. And the article that I'd like to share with you is from the, I believe this is the November issue of the Atlantic, which I talked about my new subscription in that magazine video. And the article that I'd like to talk about is this one, A Death at Penn State, which is about fraternities and the lack of accountability that the fraternities have in terms of hazing and various misdeeds that occur during fraternity activities, and the fraternities get away with it. The fraternity, the larger organization of fraternities get away with. And this particular article is specifically about a young boy, Tim Piazza, who was killed last February, I believe, during a night of hazing where he was injured in a fall and nobody called 911 and no medical attention was given to him. In fact, just the opposite. People, continued to abuse his unconscious body, and he died. And this story is just, it's heartbreaking in the individual, the death of this 19-year-old boy who's never gonna, go on to realize his life that he might have had. But it's also heartbreaking in that the way it reflects the problems that we're having in the wider culture, where particularly white privileged males feel they can do whatever they want to and there's no consequences for those actions, and that other white males are going to stand up for them and go to bat for them and help them get out of any consequences that might come as a result of their bad behavior. So I will link this article down below. It's, like I said, it's a sad article, but it is, I think, an important thing to think about, not just from the specific perspective of fraternities, but as it speaks to our wider culture and how come certain groups are allowed to get away with things and other groups are not allowed to get away with things. And it really made me think. So that's what I want from my magazine articles. So thank you to everybody who suggested that I share articles in my wrap-ups, and I will try to remember to continue to do that. Now on to the books that I completed this week. I did complete Lab Girl by Hope Jahren. Guys, 5-star read right here. This book is so beautiful. This book, Hope Jahren, combines memoir with science writing in a way that I just found absolutely enthralling. I loved her voice. I am the type of person that has a really hard time with what I call navel-gazing memoirs. I did not like Eat, Pray, Love. I had some difficulties with Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And this memoir by Hope Jahren is the kind of voice that I can appreciate in memoir. She has difficulties in her life. She experiences mental illness. She has her road to building a science lab and becoming successful in her career path is not easy. She has some family difficulties. She does not go into any of those things in depth, but the way that she describes them, you totally can feel what she felt. She brings you into her feelings in a way that was not like let's get down into the dirt and wallow around into it and feel terrible about it. She handles it much more lightly than that and much more at a distance than that, which enabled me to be able to empathize with it more fully. And then the science aspects of it. Hope Jahren is a plant biologist, and all of her research has revolved around plants and how plants, the importance of plants in our greater environment and how plants maybe communicate with each other. I found all of that fascinating. She has a very deft hand with writing about science issues, very understandable, very relatable. I just thought it was so interesting, and I shared little facts with my family. We've had great discussions on whether or not trees do actually communicate with each other after reading this book. And I will tell you that at least 2 times I cried over this book, which is very unusual for a nonfiction book for me, especially a nonfiction that's, ostensibly about science. But how Hope Jahren describes her experience in childbirth and being a young mother really hit home for me, and I really thought it was amazing work. So highly recommend this book. If you have not checked it out yet, please do give Lab Girl by Hope Jahren a try. The second nonfiction book that I completed this week was one called Maine and Me, 10 Years of Down East Adventures by Elizabeth Peavey. And this book is a collection of articles that were originally published in Down East magazine. Elizabeth Peavey is originally from Maine, had moved away as a young adult, and then had moved back to Maine, and was hired on by Down East magazine to basically explore Maine, to travel around the state and experience not just the environment and the scenery, but also to experience certain activities that the magazine thought might be interesting to their readers. So we have in here Peavey goes up north and participates in a moose safari. She goes to Jonesport and participates in a trip to an offshore island to view puffins and other seabirds. She travels around the state, is out in the western part in the Rangeley Lakes area. I mean, just all points of Maine. And then imagine my surprise when near the end of the book, I start an article and realize she's talking about my town. Like, she's literally talking about the road that I live on in my town. She traveled down here to try some. There was a person who lived on my road that used to make homemade breads and things like that out of their kitchen. And I live in a very, very small town in Maine, and she traveled to try that out and to tell the story of this couple who were baking bread out of their home. And I had no idea that was in there. And so I was like, wow, this is like happening on my road, which was kind of interesting. I'm not sure how well this book would, how much anybody who doesn't live in Maine would find this book interesting. It was a good read, but not a great read. I found it interesting simply because I am from Maine, and a lot of her experiences were things I could relate to or places I had been myself. So, take that for what it's worth. And then for what I am currently reading, I am currently still listening to my audiobook, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. I'm not sure I'm going to make it through that. I'm thinking I'm going to need to switch to a hard copy version of it because it's very dense, and I'm finding that I'm not taking it all in the way that I want to. I think it's the type of book where I would do better if I read it in a physical copy versus listening to it. So I may switch out my audiobook. I haven't fully decided on that one yet. And then I'm continuing with my presidential biography, A. Lincoln. I am currently on page 404 and still very much enjoying this. This is, I think, one of the few presidential biographies, the other one that I remember was like this was John Adams by David McCullough, where it's so, the narrative is so propulsive that you want to keep reading it and you want to pick it up. It's very, very well done, and I am learning just a ton of things about Abraham Lincoln that I didn't know. So he's finally been elected president as we've reached page 400, and he has taken up residence in the White House and is dealing with his first crisis immediately after inauguration, which was whether or not to resupply Fort Sumner or to let it be taken over by the southern states, which had already seceded from the Union. So that's where we're at with Lincoln. And then I did finally pick up a fiction read. I had completed 8 nonfictions so far this month, so I feel comfortable. I've met my goal. I wanted to read 8, and I was feeling in the mood for some good fiction. I love the J.D. Robb series, as I've said in earlier videos. This is like 30 something in the series, so don't jump in here if you want to give it a whirl. But I consider these books comfort reads. I know what I'm gonna get, and I love it. I love the relationships between the characters. This particular episode is dealing with a long-distance sniper attack, which seems really apropos for today's current, culture and climate. So that's kind of strange in a futuristic novel, but so far really already drawn in. Just started reading this morning, and I'm already on page 62, so this is going to be a quick read for me. So another successful reading week. I think Nonfiction November is great. I've really enjoyed my time with it so far. We'll see what else I can get done by the end of November, and I will bring my results back to you in my next in my video at the end of next week, and I will talk to you later.